Welcome to Evolve Through God. This next guest that you are about to listen to, Michelle Jacobik. Wow. What an episode. What a conversation we just had. She talks about who God was to her. And in some times in her life that were extremely challenging, she had opportunities to get on her knees. And in those moments is when she truly found God. Both at a time when her daughter was in the NICU for 34 days and at a time where once her daughter grew up, she struggled and it brought Michelle to full surrender. I encourage you to listen to this episode to really hear what she says as a young child who started in Catholic school to a girl who later spent 17 years not in the church at all. Michelle's story is one of twists and turns, one where God has always showed up for her. And I'm excited for you to listen to her story. And now, let's have the episode. Welcome to Evolve Through God. My name is Angela Goodman, and the guest that I have on today has been a long time coming, to be quite honest with you. So she and I had the opportunity to finally meet in person in December, although we had been communicating for probably at least a year before that.
Maybe two, yeah.
Yeah, it's been quite some time. So I'm excited, Michelle Jacobik. Please say your last name because I always mess it up.
It's Jacobik. It's
Jacobik. Thank you. If I could only put in the right place. Yeah. But anyway, Michelle, I am so grateful to have you on today. I'm excited for you to share your walk with God. You are a deep woman of faith. And just thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I was really excited for this conversation when you put the podcast together. I was just really just enamored with the call, right? Like it wasn't the perfect time, it wasn't the perfect season, and it was like, nope, I heard God, and it's time to have some conversations. So I love that. One of the things that's been really great for me is the introspective pieces that happen when you're listening to a podcast about faith and people's walks and journeys. And I think that's been the thing that's brought me back to listening to your guest and yourself share your journeys, because my journey has been an interesting one, right? The traditional journey of growing up Catholic. My mom and dad were actually, my mom is a devout Catholic. My dad was Protestant, and they were the first couple to get married on the altar at the church. And one of the things that was required, and one of the agreements that they made when they went through the premarital counseling and all of those things, was that when they had children, that they would be raised Catholic. And so that was the agreement that my parents made, and the vow that they kept to each other as part of their marital vows. And so it was really interesting for me to grow up in a household where my mom, like, we went to church, we went to CCD, I was in Catholic school. My brother, we were both in public school, and my brother in fourth grade was really having some struggle with reading, and the public school wasn't supporting that. And so my mom made a decision to put him in Catholic school. And it was like one street over. And I was just like, well, what about me? Like, how come I can't go to Catholic school? And so, I had no idea it was going to be uniforms and all the things and whatever. I just wanted to be a part of it. And I remember my first entry into Catholic school, I was in second grade, and I actually had a lay teacher, the only teacher that wasn't a nun.
Really?
First time ever brought into the school. And I happened to get Miss Miranda, this gorgeous blonde, long blonde hair, just like beautifully centered woman of grace. My brother got Sister Mercedes. Boom, right? like afraid of her. But we both went through Catholic school and had all of the pieces, the Sunday Mass, the during Lent, the fasting, the Stations of the Cross on Friday night. And I was raised doing the rosary. Like my grandmother, my mom's mother, had maybe a first year of high school education and 5 children, lost a child right before he turned 15, lost her husband, and then was left to raise 4 children.
Wow.
With a lack of education, and ended up being helped by the nuns. And so my mom has this beautiful relationship, and the nuns are sisters, and they're not the sisters that I see, the fear-bearing sisters.
Yeah.
They were just beautiful people that came in and saved the day and gave my grandmother a job of, cooking and cleaning and the things that needed to happen to keep the family together. So for me, I was raised doing the rosary. Like I slept at my grandmother's almost every weekend, and all of my cousins would cuddle in the bed and we would do the rosaries.
Yeah.
And I was given all the foundational pieces of what faith looked like and the acts of faith. It was, when I think back, it was really like, what were the acts of faith and how to behave and how to
What was,
be.
yeah, I was going to say, what was the most profound for you at that time? Like looking back, so you were probably, you said second grade was when you started. So you were
Yeah.
9, 10-ish, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
what is the thing that you remember most about Catholic school and the acts of faith?
Yeah. So what I remember most was that I had a sense of what it all was and the traditional pieces of it,
Mm-hmm.
but there was a disconnect for me.
Okay.
There was a disconnect. It
Yeah.
was like, could we change this up a little bit? Right? Like the hymns. I mean, and it's so funny because like I went to church with my mom, like on Christmas, she wanted to go to church. I was like, I'll go to Catholic church with you. And they changed some of the words. And I was like, what happened in your spirit? Like not peace be with you. It's like something else. And I'm like,
Oh, yeah,
after
yeah,
all those years,
yeah.
after
Yes.
all these years, they've
Yes.
changed the words. Like
Yes.
I wanted them to change the words. I wanted them to change the songs. I wanted them to change the hymns. Like this, there was this whole reverence that didn't resonate with me. And it's not because I wasn't obedient. I think in the time when I was going through it, it felt like disobedience. It felt like when I questioned things, because I questioned a lot of things.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I had women in my life, my mom and my grandmother, who were willing to listen to my questions. It wasn't like, you can't think like that. You can't, like, that's
Mhm.
bad. You're sinning, whatever. It was never that. There was always room for discussion. Right. And I also didn't have this sense that I had to be right, but I did want to be heard around my inquisitive thinking.
Yeah.
And as I got older, like in my teens, that became more like, this doesn't feel right for me. And I think the thing that sticks with me is there was this sense of the disconnect for me. And the thing I think that is most profound is that I didn't feel like I had a loving God. I
Oh,
had a fear-based God. Like,
yeah.
don't do this or else. Don't do, it was like, if you don't do this, you won't get into heaven. If you don't do
So
this. So
you figured that out in your teens?
probably before that, but I would definitely say in my teens, I
Yeah.
was like, it felt empty. It felt traditional and it
Didn't feel
felt
like God.
foundational, but it didn't feel like God, my God. It didn't feel like God to
Yeah.
me. And I remember, Angela, like my mom, it was time to make my confirmation, right? And my brother and I were making our confirmation together, the sacrament of confirmation. And that sacrament is about choosing. You're choosing as an adult. Now you're
Mhm.
15, right? And I remember saying to my mom, but I don't choose. And remember, I had a dad who was Protestant and who didn't
Yes.
go to church. And when
Okay,
I
I was
didn't
going
want
to
to go to
ask you that
church,
question. So your
mhm,
dad, at this point in time, your mom is the one who is supporting the Catholic faith, taking you to church, doing all of that, and your dad just said, "I don't want any parts of it."
have fun. Go to church. Go
Okay,
to
all
church.
right,
When I didn't want
Dad.
to go, go to church. Your mother said, go to, you're going to church. And my dad, 6'4", he was a disciplinarian. And I was like, okay, I'll go to church. But I didn't understand when I started to get to that teen space. I was like, okay, I want to choose that religion. And it wasn't because I didn't want to go to church. That wasn't even a religion to me,
Right,
Protestant, because he
right.
didn't go to church. But I just was like, I want to choose. And you're at this stage of the sacrament, I'm supposed to be able to choose, and I don't choose. And my mother, now remember, like I was in high school, so I was finished with Catholic school. I went to a public high school. My brother went to a Catholic high school, and my mom basically said, "Well, you can finish. You're going to make your confirmation, and then you can choose." Now that set me off on a tizzy because I'm like, wait a minute. You can't make me make the decision because you want me to. But I think she just had this sense of that as long as I went through with it, that I would find my relationship with God, and I would find the foundation of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I didn't. I mean, I literally was a general hospital watcher. When you had to choose your confirmed name, your middle name, I was like, it's Monica from General Hospital, right? Like, I'm not kidding. I was like, okay, Saint Monica. I was so like, my mom's like, why? And I'm like, General
Oh
Hospital. Like,
my
you want me to
God,
pick
I
a
love
saint's
it.
name? I
Did
don't,
you
yeah,
ever ask your dad why he didn't go to church?
no. We didn't, I just, he wasn't raised in a faith, he wasn't raised in a faith-based
Mm-hmm.
home. He was raised in a broken home.
Mm-hmm.
And I did see my dad, I saw him was kind and compassionate and
Mm-hmm.
friendly and open. My dad had his first heart attack at 34 and then a TIA
Pretty.
stroke at
Oh my
43.
God.
Yeah. And I remember him going out into nature because he needed to lose weight. He was like 305 pounds and
Mm-hmm.
he was smoking and he needed to like change things. And I remember going out every day for walks and coming back centered and grounded. And I don't think I noticed it until like now when I reflect back. Somebody said to me,
Mm-hmm.
when was the first time that you started like journaling? Because like journaling is me writing to God. Like I
Right.
journaled my whole life. And but also this like element of like I have crystals. Like I love crystals. I love minerals that ground me. And somebody had asked me, like, when was the first time that you had that even introduced in your life? And I was like, my father. My
Mm-hmm.
father brought me my first lapis lazuli stone and a rose quartz.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just this like, he didn't even know why he was attracted to it, but it was this sense of spirituality. When he went in nature, he was grounded. He would spend hours in the woods. And like, I would go in the woods with him and I felt God. And
Yeah.
so I witnessed that part, but we didn't talk about religion. And, you know, I also remember it being challenging for my mom as the years went on because, I'm certain as a woman, she wanted her husband and her children all in the pew
Right.
together on midnight mass. And I remember very distinctly her many years saying, just give me this one day, come with us. And he would say no. And I just, it was like, I think back now and I'm like, how sad
Yeah.
because it really wasn't that much of a sacrifice, right? But that has also, those pieces also made her lean into her faith more about the fact that it
Mm-hmm.
was between her and God. And then also, being able to know whatever his journey was. But I think that that's challenging, right? When you're in a relationship and there's two different dynamics of
Oh
religion or
yeah.
beliefs in religion.
Yeah.
It's not that he didn't believe in God because when my father was diagnosed with cancer, he passed away at 54. He 100% like went right into his faith and
Mhm.
he believed he was going to heaven and he did the things that, from a sacrament perspective, he was able to bring that in. And my mother was the support in that because it meant a lot to her for him to be able, she needed to know that her husband was going to heaven.
Right.
And I think one of the things that's so profound for me when I think back, my grandmother, every time we prayed the rosary, we would be praying for the souls in purgatory. And so I always thought to myself, like, there's heaven, there's hell, and there's purgatory. That's just what we prayed. We prayed for the soul. My grandmother
Yeah.
had this whole heart for praying for the souls that didn't get there
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay. And I remember when I first started, so I'll go a little further, right? I was raised Catholic. I I remember even like once I could drive, like saying I was going to church and then not going to church. And then I'd be like, yeah, I went to church, right? So I just was like, I'm counting the days until I don't have to go to church,
Well,
which
what
is like,
happened? What happened after? Like once you got to the point where you were out of the house, you got
mhm.
finished with high school and you were gone. What did you do then?
Yeah, I stopped going to church. Like I
Yeah.
left out of the house at 19 years old, and one of the first things I did was stop going to church. However, what I did was I started my journey, a spiritual journey of figuring out what faith was for me, what a relationship with God, who was God to me.
Right.
And I spent the first, 5 years of being out of the house while I didn't go to church. I was in nature. I was talking to God. I remember when Conversations with God came out, the books, I
Yes,
was
love
like,
them.
oh my gosh, somebody else is having conversations with God. I am too. And I felt I could hear God many times, like God was talking to me many times through nature,
Mhm.
birds. Like I talk to the animals. I walk on my walks today, and I'm like, yesterday I was with a friend and she's like, what is up with the birds around you? And I'm like, I know, I talk to them all the time, but I feel like I feel God in nature. I feel God in the wind.
Mhm.
It does not have to be in the four walls. And I'm not negating organized religion because it has its place and it serves my mother. One of the things that I will say is I remember for years being like, don't you want to see it the other way? And then like almost being like, wake up, wake up. And then being like, no, she's such a woman of faith, like, and a woman of grace. Like, I don't ever want her to change. But I had to go through that piece of like wanting to change it in order to
Yeah.
realize that that's what real faith is. Real faith, her relationship with God is serious. Like, it's beautiful. And it is not about anything, what I think or desire. And but one of the things that I think shifted for me is that I didn't subscribe to the suffering piece. Like I I don't believe that God wants us to suffer. I mean, we will go through things to learn the lessons and stretch and
Hmm.
grow
Hmm.
that, to get to the part of the purpose that we're supposed to be at. It's not supposed to be all roses, but I don't sit in a place of worry and all of the what ifs negatives because I'm like, if I truly have faith that I'm here for a purpose and on purpose, like as if I'm doing my part and I'm faithful, but also taking action
Yeah.
towards the thing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm in gratitude. Like every day, it's thank you and use me. Those are my two prayers every
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't have to have the whole formula. Now, don't make any mistakes. God is still working on my fully surrendered state, right?
Well, when you get
It's
there,
a
you let me know.
right because
When
it's a
you
work in
figure that out, you
progress.
let me know because
Yeah,
I'm a firm believer in that. We don't ever get to the finish line.
yeah.
There's always another part of the journey.
To learn. Yeah,
Yeah, but I agree with you.
yeah.
I don't think our God wants us to actually suffer at all. I think Jesus died on the cross in suffering to show us that it wasn't what God intended for everyone. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so I think that's a great point that you make. So you spend time in nature, you get out of going to the Catholic Church every however many times a week, it sounds like often. You get out into nature, you start to commune with him in that way. When do you start your process of talking about your faith?
Yeah, that's so good. Um, I think so. One of the things that happened for me, my daughter, I was 25, we got married, I got pregnant on my honeymoon, and she was born 10 and a half weeks early. And she ended up in the NICU unit for 34 days. And
Wow.
I actually made the deal, right? You know how you bargain with God?
Yes.
Like I remember being like bargaining, like take me, don't take her. If you spare her life, this is what I'll commit to, right? Like I'll come back to church. And I remember going like actually back and even having her baptized. And I just remember being like, mm, I have to explore like what is it for me? Because one thing I did know is I did want my children to have a foundation.
Hmm.
And whether that was going to be in the home and taught. So like I like literally the spiritual solution to every problem, Ogmandino, power of positive thinking, all of those things, Robert Schuller, they
Hmm.
watched that on TV. I read to them instead of like nursery rhymes. I read them things that were spiritual in nature so that
Hmm.
they were learning. And my children, I feel like they are highly evolved. I think they came here highly evolved to show me how to continue to seek and search what that relationship with God and Jesus is.
Hmm.
And they were already walking it naturally. And I just was like, okay, I have to make sure that they have a foundation so that when they get to the point where they're trying to figure it out, they know that they had a foundation. So I went 17 years without going to church and without talking about God in an open fashion.
Right.
I always talked about writing to God. Like my friends that were around me, there was a lot of conversation in my inner circles, right? There was conversation with clients. I owned an insurance agency and I wrote like 130 churches. I wrote their insurance. And so
Yeah.
I would go to different churches trying to find the one, like from the Baptist church to this church to this church to this, trying to find the one that would feel right to raise my children up, knowing that it wouldn't be the traditional all the same and, that they could grow there, that they didn't be told to sit down and eat a snack and be quiet for 45 minutes,
Right.
Neil, get up,
Right.
Neil, get up. I wanted
Right.
them to have a sense of education as well and be able to grow. And so I actually went away for 17 years, but along the journey seeking. So I was having conversations, but mostly with people that were having conversations. But I will tell you, one of the things that was challenging for me is that many times I would go into a church open and it was over the top. It was like over the top scary for me. Like being born again, all of like some of them were really scary for me because I was
Well,
like, this
they
stuff.
brought you back to this oppressive piece of the church that you felt when you were in Catholic
Yes,
school. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I thought, even the language, in order to get to God, you have to go through Jesus. Like
Mm.
I was like, but I've been working on this relationship with God. I have a relationship with God. I have a very close relationship with God. Like for 17 years, I've walked this.
Yeah.
This is confusing to me. Right. And then also confusing was there's no purgatory. And I'm like, is that true? Right. I had studied the Course in Miracles. I had studied different things. And
Yeah.
so I was like, what is the truth? What
Oh
is the
yeah.
truth?
And I will say this, like I don't know until we get to our final moment on earth. I don't know that we'll ever really truly know the truth.
Right.
I think it's very interesting to look at all of the different religions and recognize that they're all man-made. They're all
Hmm.
man-made. And as humans, we mess things up
Yes.
legitimately. And from church to church or religion to religion, like sit back and think about too, if God had like if the opportunity came where Jesus and Muhammad and Hare Krishna and all of the prophets were sitting around a table together, right?
Hmm.
All the heads of these different religious sects were sitting around a table together. What would they say to each other?
I know.
What would they say? They're not gonna try to beat each other up or kill each other or
No,
do whatever, right?
no.
They're
It's because
they're
it's all
they're the
about love.
hands, yeah, and they're the hands that are closest to God. And then
Hmm.
God looks at all of us down here, and I'm sure he just laughs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. It's so 100%, right? There's always the exploration pieces were going on for years. And my daughter, when she was 15, started getting migraines. She had actually at 13 started going to youth group with her best friend at a non-denominational church. And I remember she was probably a year in, and I was like, "Do you want me to go to church with you?" Because she would go on Wednesday night to youth group, and then she'd go on Sunday. It was like they were on her grandmother was on the worship team, and like she was so like into it and loved it. And she's like, no, this is my journey. Like, don't just like jump on my journey. And I just was like, okay, but at the same time, like my kids had such a beautiful foundation. We had a gratitude practice, we had a gratitude jar, we prayed at night. Like we prayed at night. We prayed before our food. Like we held hands and prayed over meals. Like
Mhm.
they had the pieces to have the relationship. And when my daughter started getting migraines, she was 15, and it was a really challenging time, Angela, like really challenging. And it was probably a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe a year in. She had been to every, headache clinic, neurologist, whatever. Like was it Lyme? Was it this? Was it psychological? Like all of these things. And I remember like all the medications that she was on, nothing was working. And a friend of mine said, you've got to ask her how she is, because
Mhm.
he had been on medication and he had become suicidal. And
Oh
it scared
no.
me when he said that to me, because I was like, she's this beautiful little girl, and like but I was watching her spirit die.
Mm.
Literally, like my daughter, who had the most infectious spirit, was watching it just wither away. And I remember going out on the porch for morning journaling and talking to God. And I laid down on the deck and I just sobbed. And I said, what do I do? I was helpless. When I think about surrender, that was probably the deepest surrendering I've ever done in my life,
Mhm.
because I truly had no answers. And I heard God say, do for her what I do with you.
Mm.
Let her come to you. Let her seek you. She already has the answers, but let her come to you, because I had been pushing at that point,
Right.
pushing Tony Robbins, pushing this. You've got to fight the
Right.
migraine. You've got to
Right.
live your
Right.
life. All the things that you should never say to somebody who's not only in a painful state, but now into a depressed state,
Yeah.
which I had never experienced. And that was God's word to me. Like, let her come to you the way you come to me.
Yeah.
And I remember there was an opportunity 48 hours later where I said to my daughter, she was invited for a sleepover with the cheerleaders and whatnot, and she had missed 52 days of school. Like there was a whole
Mhm.
journey around this. And she said she wasn't going to go. And I thought, this is her last attachment to like her life. And
Right.
I was like, what do you mean you're not going to go? And she's like, well, I don't want to be the girl that brings the medication and not the
No.
makeup bag. And he was crying. And I was like, what do you want to do? Because it was an opening. Because God was clear that she knew what she wanted to do and what to
Right.
do. She knew.
She needed to use her
She,
own voice.
she said to me,
Hmm.
do you really want to know? And I said, yes. She said, you need to get me off all this medication. You need to get me to a naturopath, and I'd like you to bring me back to church. That was on a Thursday. On Friday, I walked into her church, Norwich Worship Center, and I had never been to this church. And it was incredible. And the worship team was incredible. And my spirit was lifted. And what I saw at the end, right, was my daughter walk up front,
Hmm.
which I've never, done myself,
Yeah.
walk up front for prayer and healing. And I watched the youth pastors and the pastor and his wife and my best friend, who her best friend's mom had become my best friend, who never pushed her religion on me, but was very active at that church. And I watched them pray healing over my daughter.
Mm.
And then they waved me up, and just I put my hand on her, and I felt the power of God.
It's beautiful.
I felt the power of God through people, through healing, through the ability to surrender. She surrendered, but
Hmm.
she knew, she had a knowing.
Yeah.
And we were able to get her off the meds, get her to my best friend, my other best friend had just passed her boards for naturopath. And she was able, my daughter had not, literally, she's 31, has not had a migraine since, but it allowed
Wow.
me to step into, because now she didn't have a driver's license. So for the
Hmm.
next 3 years, I went to church with her.
Mm.
And I felt God called me into that fellowship. God started directing my steps in that fellowship. I remember praying 6 months in. I don't know where you would want me to be here, but I am like overloaded. Nothing. My plate was like a conference room table. Every plate was a conference room table. There was no room for anything, but I was praying, God, if there's something you want me to do here, show me. And literally one day, a woman from the back of the church, I was sitting in the front, comes up and says, hey, I heard you own an insurance agency. And I said, I do. She's like, we do Financial Peace University here. Have you ever heard of it? And I said, no. And she said, well, there's this next week is on insurance. Would you mind listening to the CD and giving me your feedback? And I was like, sure. So I put it in my car. I listen over the next week. I bring it back and I said, she goes, what did you think? I go, amazing. It's everything that I believe. No minimum limits, have an umbrella, da 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 da. We're an independent agent. And she's like, great, because God, I've been praying on who's supposed to be leading this class, and it's you.
Oh.
Yeah. And she was a business owner as well. And I was like, she goes, no, it's you. She said, I've known it's been you for 4 months. And I was like, oh, so I agreed. I said, okay, what do I have to do? She's like, you just turn on the CD. I don't know if you've ever been through Financial Peace University, but the pastor's wife was leading it and we were friendly at that point. And so I was just going to be her sidekick. That's it.
Hmm.
I come into the next session, like we start a whole new class. I listen to the CDs, whatever, and I'm like, everything resonated. And I'm leading the class. Carol's like, I'm not leading this class. God is wanting you to lead this class. And when we advertised it, the average number of people that came in was like 8, and there were like 48, because I had put it out and my business
Right.
insurance
Right.
clients, right?
Yeah.
Because I own my insurance agency, and
Yeah.
people are like, what are you up to? So now I'm in this place of leadership, and and that felt really good for me. Like it wasn't about organized religion, it was about using my ability to lead people in a way that would heal their families.
Hmm.
And the financial aspect is huge, as you know. It is the number one
Hmm.
kids in money, right? And when I say God was already working on me, I had no intention of ever doing financial coaching. I thought when I retired and sold my business, I'd like go maybe teach at the community college and,
Right.
teach business. God had another plan. I said to Carol, I think I want to like learn, am I doing an okay job? Like, can I do this better? Like, it's all the same. And she's like, well, there is this thing we could do at Dave Ramsey's, thing. And I could sign us up and the church will pay for it. And I'm like, okay, I want to be a better coordinator. I want to know, like, what am I not doing? Should I hand out Tootsie Rolls on week 2? Like, how can I make this better? And I go out with her and we walk in, and I had no idea what she really signed us up for. And she didn't know either. Again, God was
Yeah.
working.
Yeah. He was
Um,
orchestrating.
yeah, signed us up for independent counselor, like how to be a financial counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 3 days of deep dive into short sales and foreclosures and bankruptcy and all the things that I had not walked through. But
Mm-hmm.
how do you walk with people that are in the financial trenches and suffering through it? How do you help them reset?
Yeah.
And I got really good at that. And so again, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Dave Ramsey's like, go get 10 people. I'm like, I don't have time to get 10 people. Whatever. I knew that God brought me there. And I think what's so interesting is that was the beginning of like the work that I'm doing today. I had a call on my life. I don't believe in everything Ramsey teaches, by the way. I just want to go on record to say that.
Good,
I
good.
don't think that
I
debt is
don't
bad.
either.
Yeah.
As a financial helper myself, I agree. I don't agree with everything.
Yeah. I love the steps. I love
Mm-hmm.
people understanding what step they're on because then they're goal focused and they're pulling and they're communicating. If they're not a single, they're communicating and they know that what it is they're doing together and you're not all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't subscribe to all of the teachings, right? I also work
Yeah.
with entrepreneurs as you do, and
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs need leverage to be able to figure things out. And like,
Yep.
no one's talking about that. So I
Yep.
love that you and I are. But it really gave rise, God literally pulled me into a direction that I could not shake. I never planned on writing books. And again, God said, you're going to write a book. And I'm like, it's not on my vision board. Father, it's not on my vision board. And all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, if you want me to write a book, I'll write. And the prosperity after the divorce it's the bridge between
Yeah.
the money
Yeah.
and divorce. There was no book, there was no
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's been really cool. Um,
Talk to us a
and I
little bit
know,
about like today, being an entrepreneur, being an owner, helping other entrepreneurs. What is it that you do to make sure that you keep your relationship with God dialed in? Because it plays a
yeah,
big part in the work that you do every day. So what do you do to stay on track?
yeah. So I pray before every call, regardless of the person's faith
Mm-hmm.
and what it is they are dealing with. Like it is not just me. I pray that it isn't me
Mm-hmm.
and that I'm using my God-given gifts, but I pray before each of my calls. I light a candle. I ask God to be in the details, right? And to remind me so many times, like in business, as you know, you're somebody, again, you're building something like I can get into high performance mode.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very evident for me when I was thinking that my assignment was the divorce work. And all of these things were happening. And yet my emotions were depleted. My energy was depleted. My
Mm.
bank account was depleting. And I thought, this isn't what God intended. Like I
Yeah.
knew it.
Yeah.
I was driving the bus. And so today, what I do is I stay open and I stay in relationship to what he's calling me to do. And like I said, there are days where I found myself the last 2 days calling people that God showed me this morning on my walk.
Mm-hmm.
Literally showed me Jesus just taught. Jesus went out and he taught.
Yep.
He brought the message, he brought the stories, he brought the lessons. And quite honestly, in business with social media and all of these other things, what I have been feeling and what's been reflected back to me from people who are kind and loving, and I could be like, screw you, wouldn't be loving, but that have been able to reflect back to me that like my posts on social media feel salesy. Like it feels like I'm in that masculine energy of not of selling versus
Mm-hmm.
attracting,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so just the last 2 days, I've like, this is in my face right now, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
always like, God, what can I
Yeah.
do better? And
Yeah.
it's like, well, you're going to harshly have other people tell me that I can do better.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to let my ego go. And honestly, I've been making some calls this last couple of days because I realized that some of my own, like, my heart is centered on relationship. It's
Mm-hmm.
centered on doing God's work. It's centered on knowing that I'm on purpose and for purpose and that we're not meant to do it alone. Like you and I met
Yeah.
for a reason.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I still can get in the way with my upbringing of sales and the way I was taught and all the things where it still has a masculine energy because I'm like, I got big work to do here. Right. Like
Yeah.
even something as simple as saying who has, Spotify. So my heart is I want everybody that has Spotify to know that they can listen to the Path to Profits for free. Right. That's my
Yeah.
whole heart. And
Yeah.
then yet see it out there and have somebody receive it is different. And
Yeah.
so there is this contrast that I'm working through around this crap, around social media crap, right? Because like Jesus
So
didn't have social media, but we do.
so I recorded a podcast, another host just before you and I got on. And I'm going to share this with you because I think it's important. One of the things that we talked about on that show is the perception of other people and judgment. And what I can offer to you and share with you is that anytime you feel that people are judging something that you've put out into the universe, that you know their judgment is not truth to you.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this moment, these people are telling you that your posts sound judgy, they're salesy, they're judging your
Salesy. Yeah.
posts. You know in your heart that you're doing it because you just want people to find it. At
Yeah.
that point in time,
100%.
the important part for Michelle to do is to say, wow, I wonder if they've looked at their own.
Mm,
Because in
yeah.
most cases, people who judge us are reflecting a mirror of themselves that
That's right.
they don't want to look
Yeah.
at.
Yeah.
So the next time someone says that to you, you say to yourself, that's not my truth. And you
Yeah.
just move on. You don't have to
Yeah.
change anything you're doing because in all actuality, someone else out there saw your post and said, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that that was out there for me. I'm going to go find it. I'm going to go listen to it and I'm going to learn and it's going to help me." So for
Thank
every
you for
person,
reflecting that
yeah,
back.
yeah. So
Yeah.
every person
Yeah.
who
Because
reaches out to you in that way, there's probably 5 people who saw it that you'll never hear from that just
mhm.
happened to connect to them in that moment and then helped them in a way that you intended. So if you
Yeah.
know that whatever they're telling you is not your truth, then you just say, well,
Yeah.
that's not my truth. And you just
I
move.
appreciate that because a lot of times what happens is when I'm a firm believer that the transformation is in the trigger. And so I'm always
Action.
willing to look
Yes.
at, right? I'm always willing to look at, is there something that's transformative for me if I look at the trigger? And not that I got triggered, but my trigger
Hmm.
was to their reaction,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
had a trigger to their
As they
reaction.
judged you. And so you
Right.
immediately said, wait a minute, and judgment is one of those spirals, and I have been guilty of it so many times that when someone comes to me and says that they project their judgment on me, then I immediately go back and
Hmm.
judge them.
Yeah.
That's not what solves the issue. The question is, if
Yes.
someone judges you, the question you ask yourself,
Am I in
is
truth? Is
that
that my
my
truth?
truth?
That's
Is that
right.
my truth? Was that my
Yes.
intention? Sometimes you're going to answer yourself and say, "Oh shoot, that was my intention."
Yeah, that was my
Right?
ego.
And
Yeah,
then
exactly.
you can say, "Oh boy, let me go work on that." But I mean, in all honesty, if you ask yourself, "Is this my truth?"
Yeah.
and you can honestly say that it's not your truth, then you just move on because you did
Leave
it
it
in
alone.
the, yeah.
Yeah.
God puts us on missions that other people are not going to agree with.
Yes, I
God
agree.
puts us on missions that other people are going to look at and think are wild and crazy. I had a text from a good friend of mine yesterday because I'm on this new path for myself and kind of a rebirth
Yeah.
process. And he knows that and he wrote me back and he says, "You keep talking to our Father because sometimes it's going to be nonsensical and completely out of left field."
Yeah.
And I said, "You know what? Right now it is nonsensical and completely out of left field. And I guess sign me up for it because that's where I'm at right now. But there's going
Yeah.
to be people out there who are going to look at the things I'm doing and go, what in the world is she doing?" But
Yeah.
that's not for them. It's only for me.
That's right. 100%. A
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I think that, and that's, I think the thing, right, is like those God moments, like God has already synchronized all of the things
Ugh.
this last 6 months. It's like, God put the book in the Grammy gift bags. Like that's a joke. Like I'm like, okay, whatever. And then all of a sudden, like I get a Stevie Award, and I'm like, what the heck are the Stevies? Well, it's the Oscars for books, and I'm like, God wants to have some notoriety here because I don't even know what these things are, right? And I'm just like, okay, so what is if that's? And I laugh, right? Because I think that there is humor in my relationship with God. There's actually a lot of humor,
Yes.
and I think that that's
He's a funny
so
guy.
fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so fun, like one of the things that I'll do once a month, I'll sit down and I'll have lunch with Jesus. I'm like, I'll just sit there and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have lunch with Jesus. And it's actually a very playful and fun thing,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, I've been in Naples for 4 years, and I'm feeling called to find a place for me to fellowship again, right? Because I've been
Yeah.
here and we haven't found that yet. My husband and I, our Sundays are our worship Sundays, right? They involve worship walks, worship talks. He's very spiritual as well. That was one of the things when I got remarried. I was like spiritual, not necessarily
Yeah.
religious. Like
Yes.
it just,
Yes.
yes. And I have somebody who's had a 1 day at a time relationship for 30 years and
I love
very
that.
grounded in his relationship with God. Yeah. And so many of the things happen in our home, the prayer together and so forth. But yeah, I'm feeling called in this last couple of weeks, like to worship, like to
Yeah.
go in and find a place to be surrounded by other people. We did go to a couple of places when we first got here, and we both were like felt transactional.
Mm.
And but I don't want to not explore when my heart is saying it means that God's calling me
Yeah.
to something, and to trust that. And who knows, right? Who knows what is in that? Because like if I didn't have my daughter pull me in that direction, I would have never been where I am today, and the Financial
Mhm.
Peace University and the work that I'm doing to heal families and help businesses, like it wouldn't be in play. It was
Yeah.
all orchestrated.
Oh yeah.
And so,
100%.
yeah,
100%. Well, you know what? It's hard to believe that we've been chatting as long as we have, but we are
I
nearing
know.
the end of our available time. Um, Michelle, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story today. I feel your heart. Like I know
Thank
your
you.
heart. I see the work that you're doing out there in the world. And we have been in person together only really once for a day or so, but I feel in that time that I have been able to feel
Mm,
your heart. So I appreciate you, and don't listen to all those
same.
people out there. It's not your truth, you know?
Thank you. Same,
Yeah.
Angela.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, or tell the listeners, how can they find you if they want to learn more about you, follow you? How can they find you?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. You can find me on all the social channels under Michelle Jacobik. You'll probably drop that in the show notes.
Hmm.
And also, I have a LinkedIn newsletter called The Path to Profit. So if there's somebody that is here listening in your audience that is business, they want
Hmm.
to get some tips and tricks, that's a great newsletter to subscribe to. And then my website is michellejacobic.com.
Awesome.
My passion is to help people get out of financial avoidance and to actually, so many people go into business, but they don't know the business of business.
Yeah.
And they also don't have personal finance education. And so the path to profits is the way for you to implement a system and understand that there's a bridge between both the business finances and the personal, and
Mhm.
the method to pull them together. So the more work that I can do with people in that space, they can DIY it, listen to the book on, Spotify or Audible, grab
Yeah.
it and highlight it and start doing the work. Or if they need support, they can reach out.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on today. I really appreciate
Thank you
it.
for having
And I
me.
get to see you soon in person. So,
Yay. I
yeah.
can't wait. I can't
Yeah.
wait. Thanks for having me, Angela.
Yeah, of course. And thank you all for listening to Evolve Through God. We'll catch you on the next episode.